What a season. What is up, everyone? What is going on? My name is Matthew Langer. I am the football boss, and I told you I would do this. Game of Thrones season 4. Um, and yeah, I got a lot to talk about with this season. We're going to be doing my season 4 review. It's the very first time I've seen Game of Thrones. I've seen the first 4 seasons though. You can go check those out on my channel, Football Boss, Game of Thrones. You can choose whatever one you want, season 1, 2, or 3. And I hope you guys like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel though, and follow me on Facebook on MatthewLeininger. And of course, we're getting close to the actual season, so I got a lot of football content that I really want to put out. And so let's get right on into it though. Hopefully this will be shorter than before. Hopefully I can get a condensed version in. Probably won't though, because there's a lot to talk about with these shows, a lot of things to talk about with the season. So let's get right on into it. This will be a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the season, I would suggest not watching this video though. So yeah, what did I think about this new season? And I think this is the best season by far. And if from what I'm hearing is true, I'm probably going to say that this is probably going to be the best season in general. Though I have heard that the last couple seasons are not as good, and since I am entering into the last half of the show, I don't know if it's going to hit the highs of season 4. And then plus, with my thoughts of season 4, there's so much I loved about the season. I mean, the story moved along. The bad guys took a massive hit in this season. Multiple storylines were interesting, though. There is one storyline that was a little frustrating to me. I'll get more into that, though. And some awesome fight scenes. Awesome, great soundtrack. I mean, this is the season where I really started to appreciate the music, though. The music's really good. And then, of course, my favorite character got killed off, and he got exactly what he deserved, and it put a giant smile on my face, which I'll talk about that. But just in general, I think this was the best season by far. You can also see the story get moved along, questions get answered though. I felt like most of the episodes ended in cliffhangers, which is a good thing though, because then you can cliffhanger your story to be like, oh man, I wonder what's gonna happen with that though. Oh, I wonder what's gonna happen with that though. Oh no, how are they gonna fix this? And then there was even a particular character. I felt like they just kept subverting your expectations. We're like, oh, he's gonna die, he's not gonna die, he is gonna die, he's not gonna know he is gonna die, but then psych, he's actually gonna live, and then this character is gonna die instead. And it just took me totally by surprise though, and I love that about this season. So yeah, let's get right on into it though. And let's start off with my favorite particular location though, and it was King's Landing. There's a lot that happens in King's Landing, and I think the thing that's the most impressive though is that it doesn't feel cramped. It doesn't feel rushed. It's not like we're like, oh my gosh, we're just going through this stuff, because like for example, for some of these Marvel Disney Plus shows though, they've always seemed to rush the ending of the season, which I'm not sure why they do that, but I guess that's what they have to do. This doesn't feel rushed. It feels like it's taking its time to go through everything, and it pays off in a really good way. So then, of course, getting right on into it, though, the way the season started out with King's Landing, though, is the thing that I found most interesting was kind of with Jaime, though. And I did say, I was like, I'm hoping Jaime's not going to go back to that, like, being a jerk again. And he's not, which is a very good thing. But the way they handled Jaime in the first season, it really... In this season, really kind of reminded me of what they did with Tyrion in the last season, though. Tyrion just gets crapped on by his father. Tyrion's like, hey, I think I deserve this. And Tywin's like, no. He's like, you're not. He's just like, yeah, you don't deserve any of this. Same thing happens with Jaime, where Joffrey trashes him, Tywin trashes him. And so I felt that was kind of like very similar, though. And then even Cersei's just not happy to see him either, though. And even though Jaime kind of wants to incest her a little, which is not good, though. it's this. He's like, I always. He's like, I wanted to get back to you, and she's like, yeah, you took too long. It's like that was out of his control. Well, not to her. And then of course you get to episode 2, and I'm gonna say that the last 30 minutes of the episode is very cringeworthy. Now that's not a bad thing. I just think they wanted to give you just one more swift reminder of just how cruel Joffrey is, to be like, hey, remember, you hate this character. This guy's this guy's the worst. And something that was actually very cool about that scene is that in seasons 2 and 3, mostly seasons 2 and 3, because in season 2 and 3, those are the ones where Joffrey is king the most. And when it shows him torture people, it's mostly been Sansa and Tyrion. It's basically just been showing the perspective of those two, the people that he's bullying, people he's torturing. In this last season, it shows the perspective of others, to be like, people be like, okay, we don't like this very much. I thought it was actually very cruel though, cool, not cruel. And then even when Marjorie and Joffrey get married though, see Olenna, she doesn't clap. She's not happy. She's not happy about it. I mean, she knows that Joffrey's a monster. She learned that last season, but she's just like, no, I'm not clapping for you. And then of course Joffrey's just bored at the wedding though, and he's like, hey, I think we deserve entertainment. Puts on the play the Battle of the Five Kings, and then of course they show this briefly at the end of season 3, but then they also once again established it in season 4, where when they killed Robb, they cut his head off and sewed the direwolf's head to it. So who comes out playing Robb? The guy with the direwolf's head. And it's like, oh, that's terrible. And then Joffrey, he's having time. It's like he's laughing, spitting out his drink. And of course it shows like Cersei and Tywin. They're like, oh yeah, he can do whatever he wants. It shows perspective of others. People are even Marjorie. Marjorie's like, I don't like this all. And of course she keeps trying to distract them by being like, oh, the cake is here. And then another thing I thought was really cool is when Joffrey's kind of looking down at Tyrion and saying, hey, I want you to be my cupbearer, and because you're my cupbearer, I want you to kneel before me. And Tyrion, while he doesn't say anything, he just looks him dead in the eye and he doesn't say anything. He just gives him this look of, I ain't bound to you. You hate me. You hate my wife. You torture me. You torture my wife. I ain't bound to you. And you can tell he's not gonna stand down. And just the entire time watches, my blood is just boiling. I don't think I've ever hated Joffrey more than that moment though, where it's like, can someone kill this guy, please? And I didn't think it was gonna happen then. I had a feeling something bad was gonna happen, where I'm like, oh great, my weddings never go well in this show. But it was like, okay, what kind of bad things happen? And all of a sudden he just starts coughing, and it's like, what? And of course he just collapses on the ground. And the thing that was actually, and the thing that was really cool is that he doesn't die this quick. He's that he dies a horrible death. He really does. You can hate Joffrey all you want. You gotta admit, he dies a pretty horrible death. I mean, there's a moment where he's just on the ground, just shaking in pain, and it's like, oh my gosh, like that's terrible. But then it's just like, bye. Yeah, screw you, Joffrey. And just once again, this show puts a twist on where they're like, yeah, no one is safe here. Your favorite characters are gonna die. And just as I said earlier, where I was like, the bad guys, they take a massive hit this season. And once again, I'll start diving way more into this, but just yeah, he got exactly what he deserved, and I that made me so happy. I mean, not just the fact because I just hated him, but be just like, number one, it was unexpected, just like multiple other moments in this show, and then second of all, he gets exactly what he deserves. It's not like it's not like, oh, we're gonna dethrone you, like to be like, oh, we're gonna give the crown to someone else, or be like, oh, we're just gonna lock you in prison. No, they kill him, and it's a horrible death. And then I don't even believe they revealed his murderer yet, though. Of course, they teased it was Littlefinger. They also teased it was Olenna, but I don't think either one of them confirmed, yeah, we killed Joffrey. So I feel like that mystery is still going to continue on. And then something I was like, oh my, I'm like, let's keep this mystery going on for a little while. So I got a little worried when they were both like, yeah, we did. I'm like, no, I'm like, don't keep this mystery going on for a little while longer. And then of course, Santa gets taken away by Baelish, so we'll get more into that a little later. And then of course that leads into Tyrion's trial, though. And the thing that was actually really interesting about Tyrion's trial is that the people that are like testifying against him, it's true, but it gets twisted up a little bit. And then of course you kind of get the big reveal that then Shay comes in and betrays him, which then also that has a consequence earlier in the season, because Tyrion can tell that like Tywin he's gonna kill you, and he keeps telling her that, like, he's like, no, I'm trying to send you away, I'm trying to protect you, and she's just like, yeah, I don't care, I want to stay with you because I love you. And then eventually he's like, the only way I can get rid of you is to break your heart. And so, but it breaks his heart too, and then she just gets revenge on him right here by once again saying everything that's happened in the first 3 seasons, but then twisting up by saying, yeah, he did kill Joffrey. And then of course that leads to his speech, which was awesome, and then just demands a trial by combat, because he's like, yeah, I didn't do it. I know you guys aren't gonna give. He's like, I know I'm gonna suffer the consequences because of this. And he's like, I'm not dying for Joffrey. I demand a trial by combat. And then and just listen, that speech is awesome. And then also like right before it, then Jaime tries to make a deal with Tywin, and like earlier in the season, Jaime did say, yeah, I don't want a wife and kids. He's just like, I want to be a part of the King's Guard. He's willing to sacrifice that for Tyrion. And just as I said, I'm glad they didn't go back to like Jaime's being a jerk again. So like that really kind of confirmed, like, okay, like Jaime's a good guy now. So yeah, Jaime's awesome. Like I'll say of all the characters though, his journey I think is the best. Though the thing that they've done the best with, because if you told me after season 1 episode 1 where he pushes Bran off the building, you told me that he was gonna be one of my favorite characters, I would have said, have you not seen the first episode? No. I thought that was absolutely great what they did with him. And this is kind of the point in the season where I feel like they just start putting just twists and turns on just everything. I'll be like, oh, is Tyrion going to survive or not? Because when he demands a trial by combat, you're like, okay, okay, Bronn's going to help him again. But then of course like Jaime turns him down, and then Bronn turns him down. And the thing about Bronn is that he doesn't do it in like a selfish way where he's like, yeah, he's just like, I got a wife now, my life is comfortable now, I kind of want to stick with my wife and the person you're going to be fighting, he's big, I don't want to do it. And then when Tyrion's like, oh, I guess I'll fight him, then it's like, Tyrion's going to die, isn't he? And they also find out who he's fighting on the mountain, I remember that he was in the first season where, of course, he cut the head off his horse. You just see him just slaughtering people. He's big, he's buff, and it's like, uh-oh. Like, that's not good. Like even when Bronn, like even if Bronn is like, oh yeah, I'll fight him, it's still like, oh no, this is not good. And then Oberyn walks into a cell, and he's like, I don't believe the lies that people are telling you is true. Like, he's like, I met you when you were a baby. And Cersei, he's like, Cersei, your sister, is just like, oh, he's like, this guy's a monster. He murdered our mother. Like starts describing him as the devil. And then he's just like, that's not a devil. He's like, that's just a baby. So he's like, I don't believe you killed. He's like, I don't believe you killed Joffrey. And then, of course, Tyrion's like, if you've come for justice, this is the wrong place. And Oberyn's like, no, I disagree. This is the perfect place. I know you're innocent. And 2, I'm here for revenge. Because he established earlier in the season, very first episode when he gets introduced, and they prove that he's a pretty good swordsman. Because of course he stabbed someone in the hand. I can't remember what it was over. But it was basically like, okay, who's faster? Okay, Oberyn is. But then he also said, like, hey, I'm here for revenge. I want to kill the person that raped and murdered my sister. And it's like, oh, He's here for revenge. And then he's like, yeah, the mountain, he was the one who did it. So he's like, it's a win-win. I set you free, and then I killed the person that did. And when he says moments, I will be your champion, it's this moment of, yes, yes, he's going to be his champion. And it gives you this little bit of hope. Like, okay, maybe he can actually get out of it alive. But then right before the fight starts, which I'll get into the fight in a little bit, right away, since we've never really seen him fight, like he's drinking wine, kissing his wife, and he's basically guaranteeing, yeah, I'm gonna kill this guy. It's like, oh, is he over his head? And then he comes out and he starts swinging that spear around that he has, and it's like, okay, he's not in over his head, he can do this. And then throughout the fight, you can tell he's a better swordsman than the mountain. I mean, of course, he's doing like all these like flips, and he's doing these like flips in the air, he's swinging his sword around. I mean, he's cutting him. He even like stabs him at the one point, and it's like, yes, it's like Tyrion's gonna survive. And you can see like, oh yeah, he has a right to be cocky, but then it's like, oh, he's a little too cocky. Gets in close, and he's just like, hey, he's like, before I kill you, I want you to admit you did it. And he gets too close, the mountain trips him, crushes his face in, and he's like, yeah, I did it, I killed her like this. It's like, Tyrion's gonna die, isn't he? Ends the episode right there, and it's like, what? It's like, you had it, man. You had a right to be cocky, but you were a little too cocky, and it's like, no. But just like, that's like a matter of like, oh, he's gonna live, he's gonna survive, he's gonna live, he's gonna survive, and like, it keeps you in it. It's not boring. So just that right there was like, oh snap, this is bad. But then once again, they still pull a twist on it, where they're like, oh no, Tyrion's gonna die, but they're like, no, psych, actually Tywin's gonna die instead. Because like, you don't want Tyrion to die because he killed Joffrey. And even if he did kill Joffrey, you're like, I don't want him to suffer the consequence of this. Like, Tyrion deserves a parade. No, not to this cruel world. And of course, Jaime breaks him out, and he's just like, hey, he's like, go up those steps and escape. But Tyrion's like, I want to say, he's like, I want to see my father one more time. Goes to his father's bed, and who's in his bed? Shae. Tywin has been sleeping with Shae. Oh, first of all, that's gross, because Tywin's probably like 30 years older than her. Second of all, it's like, oh no, why? Tyrion just strangles her, kills her, and he walks into the bathroom and he sees Tywin there, and he basically makes Tywin confess. Tywin's like, yeah, I knew you were innocent, but we all hate you, so we were gonna kill you. And of course he calls Shae a whore, and Tyrion's like, hold up his crossbow. He's like, yeah, you call her that again. Tywin calls his bluff, shoots him, and of course leaves that very satisfying moment, where Tywin's like, you shot me, you're no son of mine. And he's like, I am your son, I have always been your son. Shoots me and kills him, and it's like, no, yes. And for me, Tywin's one of those villains that I actually really like. It was a slight bummer to see him go. I wasn't. He was another character I wasn't expecting. Like how with Joffrey, I wasn't expecting Joffrey to survive up to season 8 and then like be like, okay, season 8's over, he's still alive. I wasn't expecting that. Tywin was one of those same characters. But the thing about Tywin is, I thought he was actually a really good villain, because he's just not afraid of anyone. Like, I mean, he's the hand of the king. He's not the king, and he made it clear last season. Where he's like, yeah, Joffrey, I'm not afraid of you. Anyone who must say I am the king is no true king. But even in this season, though, you actually see him. You realize he's actually a good hand of the king. He's not a good person, but he's a good hand of the king. He's a bad person, but he's a good hand of the king, because he starts giving good advice to Tommen, the new king, where and he openly admits right in front of Cersei, yeah, Joffrey wasn't a good king. He was a really bad king. And you know what? If he was a good king, he probably would still be alive. Right in front of Cersei. Like, that's the one person you don't say that in front of. He does it because he's like, I'm not afraid of you. He was a bad king. It's clearly obvious. He was not a good king. And then even asked someone, what kind of a king do you want to be? And he's like, I want to be a good king. I want to be a wise king. He's like, exactly. He's giving good advice to him. And you realize he is a good hand to the king. But not a good person, totally deserved to die. And unfortunately that this was also kind of a spoiler for me. I kind of knew Tyrion was going to survive because I also have seen images with Tyrion with a beard, like a full-on beard. So I was like, really? I'm like, he's going to die? And then I was like, that's not a particularly good deal where it's like you lose one of the most hated characters of the show and then you lose the best. It's like, that's not a good deal. If you're going to lose Joffrey and Tywin, it's like, yeah, it's like, that's a great deal. And it's like, that's where you can see House of Lannister is starting to collapse. They were the house that for the first 3 seasons, they suffer no consequences for their action. They kill people, they torture people, they put Joffrey on the throne. The good people suffer the consequences from it, though. Red Wedding happens, they suffer no consequences. This is the first season where they start suffering from those consequences. And House of Lannister takes a big hit, and just it was not something I was particularly expecting. So that's enough of that. It took me 21 minutes. I was expecting this one to last quite a while though. All right, let's go to one of our shorter ones though, and I will say the good news is that I don't really have a lot of bad to talk about with the season. For the first 3 seasons, I put like a bad section at the end of it though. I'm not gonna put that at the end of the season though. If there was something I really didn't like, it was actually kind of Bran's story though. Now don't get me wrong, I did get invested into a little bit, especially when like Bran gets like captured though, and of course he walks into Hodor. Hodor snaps Locke's neck, and it's just like, yeah, that's for Jaime's hand. And then of course him being so close to Jon Snow and him finding the Three-Eyed Raven, of course like the zombies coming up through the ground, killing one of the boy that was with him. And him reaching the Three-Eyed Raven, he reached his goal. But I feel like Bran has been a missed opportunity. The last 2 seasons, the last 2 seasons have been the time where he's been the most interesting, and he's barely been in. They've barely touched on it. In the first 2 seasons, they start hinting at this, like, okay, what's this Three-Eyed Raven? Wait a minute, why is he like a wolf sometimes? They bring that mystery up, and then in season 3, they're like, oh, he's a warg, he has powers. He doesn't use those powers until the way end of the season. Season 4, like, okay, we're going to look for the Three-Eyed Raven, and they find at the way end of the season, but there's really nothing interesting in between. So I'm like, I feel like this is a missed opportunity. Now, yes, I know this is off of books, and you can't really change something that's like in the middle of a book. I have seen some movies that I've seen some movies that are based off of books and like change stuff in the book, and it's like, I don't particularly like that very much, where it's like they put like this like whole new plot line in, or it's like they change the ending. It's like, what is this? Like, this is ridiculous. And so I haven't read the books, and I know you do have to go along with the books, but I'm like, I feel like this has been a missed opportunity, where this is where he's at his most interesting, and they don't touch on it. And then let's go to another short one, Arya and the Hound. Arya was a character I felt like got sidelined last season. Just her story wasn't particularly interesting though. And for the first little bit, I was like, oh, I'm like, she's getting sidelined again, isn't she? Because it's basically just her and the Hound bantering back and forth. Of course, there are some funny moments. In it. You also get a moment where the Hound basically like says like, yeah, this is why I'm scarred. This is why I don't like fire. So, and that was a nice moment. But then, actually right before that, and then of course Cersei tells Jaime, hey, I want you to go find Sansa, and he's like, I want you to kill her. And then Jaime, of course, makes a good deal on it, where he's like, okay, I'm gonna send Brienne and Podrick along with. Well, of course, I do like me some Podrick though. Of course, right away he's like, I'll protect you, sir. It's like, you idiot! That's a woman. He's like, ma'am. It's like I do love me some Podrick. It was a shame that of course Tyrion, Bronn, and Podrick got broken up though. or at least like Potter goes like somewhere else. But just yeah, but just them kind of going out. And then of course, Brienne meets Arya. It's just like, oh hey, you're Arya, and of course, her and the Hound start getting into a sword fight. And something also I talked about, I think these are some of the best fight scenes though. And while it is cool to have like a battle where it's like you do have like quick kills, it is nice to have like a one-on-one sword fight. And this is a pretty vicious sword fight though. I would say besides Oberyn and the Mountain, this is probably one of the most brutal ones, where of course like once they disarm each other, they're just punching each other. I mean, they're punching each other in their balls, and then of course Brienne pushes the Hound off a cliff, and then of course you get to the last one with Arya and the Hound. That was when I realized, I'm like, oh, like this is what they've been leading up to in the season. While they can't really cover much of it, this is where it's like, oh, this is where it's leading to. Oh, okay, that's actually kind of interesting. Where the Hound is just like, yeah, I'm dying. All right, Arya, kill me. Just get it over with. He's like, I'm on your list. I'm one of the people you want to kill. Go ahead and kill me. And she just can't do it. And he even tries to butter her up. Where he's like, man, he's like, I should have killed your sister. I should have raped her. It's not working. Because Arya and the Hound have been together for so long. Arya has realized, yeah, you're the only person that's actually protected me. I can't kill you. And of course she goes off on her own journey. I believe she's going back to the Jaqen guy. I think Faceless Assassin. I think she's going back with them. I did say I wanted him to come back though, and I believe in the trailers they were like he was coming back, but yeah, I don't know. She goes off on her own journey now, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the Jaqen again. I really liked him in season 2. And then another one. Let's go to Sansa. It's nice seeing Sansa a little more happy, though of course she still gets tortured a little bit more when of course the aunt tries to kill her because she kissed Littlefinger. But something that's very interesting is that Littlefinger, you can't trust him, and that's the swag I kind of like with him. There's always a mystery around him where you're like, okay, something's always up with this guy. And even when he rescues her, it's like, okay, it's like, what's in it for you? And for the first little bit, like, is he actually helping her? Because he did love Catelyn, and of course he even said, he's like, you should have been my daughter. So that makes you think, okay, is he actually helping her? And he brings her to her aunt, and then of course he covers up the fact where he tells Robin and the aunt, at least I'm pretty sure it's Robin, the one kid's like, hey, he's like, I want to see people fly down there. Like, he brings it back to them, and he's just like, nay, and he tells him, hey, you're gonna call her Sansa when no one else is around. If you're around other people, you call her this name. And it's like, he's really trying to protect her. It's like, makes you think like, maybe he's actually being good. And they also, he kisses the aunt, and they reveal, we're the one, like, actually, I believe it was Baelish. Baelish killed Jon Arryn. The reason why the reason why the show exists is because of Baelish. And it's like, oh, it was him. It wasn't the Lannisters. It was him. Just as that questions get answered. And then of course kind of leads to the big twist. To me, it wasn't really a twist when he says, I only ever loved, or actually right before it, where he does kiss Sansa, and of course the aunt sees it, and it's like, uh-oh. And then the aunt threatens to throw Sansa through the door, which they gotta cover that. Why have that? That's so stupid. Someone could fall through. Now, I do believe there are doors that cover it, but it's just like, why do that? Like, why have that? That's stupid. And then of course like Baelish comes around where he's like, whoa, calm down. And he's like, Nate, and he's like, I've only ever loved one woman, and he implies it's you, but then he's like, no, it was your sister. And when he was like, I've only ever loved one woman, I'm like, oh, the aunt's gonna die. I'm like, he's gonna push her, and then he's like, it was your sister. Push him off. It's a twist, but I'm like, it was something that I was expecting. But since Sansa realized that, like, he's trying to protect me, she covers for him to basically tell the truth, but be like, yeah, the aunt committed suicide. Which we're at a point now where I'm like, okay, I'm not sure exactly where they're going with that now, but it's like, okay. Okay, she trusts him. Not a good idea. And yeah, but and it definitely does look like she'll be in season 5. I was expecting it though, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to be doing now with that. But it's one of those stories where I'm like, okay, I'm not sure where you're doing this. Another one. This is kind of another brief one though. Theon / Reek. While he doesn't get tortured as much in this season though, his sister of course does come to rescue him, but because Ramsay, he's just broken Theon so much, he won't even take the rescue, and his sister just is like, yeah, my brother's dead. Now I'm not sure if she's gonna come back later to rescue him, or they're gonna be like, yeah, I'm like, she's gone. But yeah, basically Ramsay and Bolton, they own the North right now. They basically taken over because there's no Starks. There's no Starks. I mean, the only 3 Starks are Bran, Sansa, and Arya. Well, Arya's off on her own adventures. Sansa's with Littlefinger, and then Bran's over the wall with the 3-eyed raven. So there's not a lot of Starks left, though. And then I don't know if this is like an origin for Jon Snow or not, because Ramsay did call himself Ramsay Snow. So that was something that really perked my mind, which I'm like, wait a minute. Is he related to him? I don't know. That was something I noticed. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. What other one? Do I literally have 2 left? Yeah, I literally have 2 stories left. 31 minutes. Maybe this won't last as long. All right. All right, let's go into another one. This probably was going to be shorter, though. Daenerys. She was a story that I was really kind of curious to be like, okay, I'm like, where are you going with this? And I don't really think it led to a particular thing. It's just that basically she just rules throughout the season. And you can tell she makes some hard choices in it, though. You, of course, like have some of the slaves, of course the old slave that comes in, where he's just like, yeah, he's like, I was better as a slave, and she's just like, you want to be owned like I'm like a goat or a chair, and he's like, he's like I was a teacher, he was like I had kids, I was better as a slave. And so she's like, okay, you can go back to that. And she keeps and she's able to keep trying to work around situations, like even when like her dragons murder the goats, which that was also awesome scene where he just comes up, just burns fire everywhere, and it's like, oh snap, these dragons are big and vicious. She's still able to work around that, where the guy is just like, yeah, I lost my goats, and she's like, okay, I'll pay the look, because goats are replaceable. And then even when there might be a bit of a love story between Missandei and Grey Worm, because of course Grey Worm sees Missandei naked, and Missandei's like, yeah, he was interested, but since Grey Worm is unsullied, he's never felt that for anyone. So that's kind of it's kind of interesting. And Daenerys, she just kind of just like rolls along with it. And even when she finds out that Jerome was a spy, she sends him away. But then she has to make a really hard choice at the end of the season, where a guy comes in and he's like, your dragons killed my 3-year-old child. Goats and being a slave, though, you can easily work around it. You can't work around the death of a child. So, of course, she has to make the really hard choice then, where she locks her dragons up. Only locks up 2. She can't find the 3rd one. I'm pretty sure the 3rd one's gonna come around later. And of course, her dragons are real big. So, I kind of have a feeling they're gonna break out, and I'm not sure if they're gonna be too happy about her having to lock them up. But whatever. And then, of course, that leads to the final location, and that would be Jon Snow. Whew. This one was quite the way to end it on. Well, actually, technically, I'm Stannis as well. Actually, we'll get into him a little bit. So of course, Stannis doesn't really have much of an army. He keeps being told, oh, hey, you're going to be able to take the Iron Throne. He just doesn't want to do anything about it, though. And then Davos, his right-hand man, comes up with a plan to go to the bank to get money to protect the wall, because he remembers seeing a message at the end of last season being like, hey, White Walkers are coming, the undead army, we need help. And then, of course, he is able to go to the bank. He's even able to talk to the bank people, like, to convince them, hey, the Lannisters are not honorable people. Stannis is an honorable person. If he makes a promise to you, he's going to fulfill it. If you give us the money, he will pay you back. You offer money to Lannisters, they ain't offering you a penny back, because they're selfish people. And they end up giving him the money, and they get the army there, and they're ready to protect the wall from wildlings, undead, White Walkers, anyone. And that's kind of cool to see Davos just so man, I can't even believe I forgot about this stuff. No, they weren't in it a ton, so I guess that makes sense. Plus, there's so many other stories going on, where he just has so much faith in Stannis Baratheon, even when last season, where Stannis is just like, oh yeah, you set Robert's bastard son free, I'm gonna kill you for that. But he's still like, he's like, yeah, you need me, and yeah, he still has so much faith in him. And then something else, it was also cool to see these storylines start to mesh together, so you can start piecing together a way, like, okay, 4 seasons left, I can kind of see how this is going to come together. And then, of course, you get to Jon Snow. And Jon, I liked him in seasons 2 and 3, but I've never loved him more now, because, and like, just as they did in season 2, they set up this battle where they're like, okay, where in season 2, like, okay, Stannis is coming, he's gonna want the throne, had a big battle in episode 9. This, like, the wildlings are coming, they're gonna want to take the wall, they're gonna take Castle Black. They set this battle up, and then the second to last episode, they paid off with a awesome battle, though. And to me, yeah, this episode 9, The Watchers on the Wall, is my favorite episode before. I loved a lot of that episode. But before we even get to that battle, though, of course, Jon has the guts to basically admit, yeah, I had an affair with Yrgit, and normally that would break his vows, and that would basically be like, yeah, you're kind of done here. But he, like, makes it clear to him where he's like, yeah, he's like, you need me, you need my help to defend the wildlings. And then when that town next to him gets attacked, that's when they realize, yeah, the wildlings mean business. They're coming for war. And throughout the season, Jon starts training with them. And Jon really starts turning into a leader in this season. And that was something that I thought was very interesting. It was something that I was like, yeah, I like seeing Jon like this. I like seeing Jon as the leader. But meanwhile, this the actual Thawne does not respect him, does not like him, and he even tries to get him killed by sending the Crasters. And meanwhile, we get to the Crasters, and there's a new guy in charge. This guy's probably even worse than him. And even with the baby boys, though, they would send them to the White Walkers, he's still like, yeah, kill it. They're like, no, he's like, no, Craster would give him the White Walkers. And he's like, okay, fine. And then they show what they do with the babies. They turn them into White Walkers, and it's like, huh. That's not good. And really, we haven't even really seen much of the White Walkers so far. I mean, we saw one in season 1, saw one with the undead army in season 2, and then there's one Sam killed, and then basically you said the one, and then plus the other one that came into which I believe is the Night King. How to remember the Night King is? I'm a smart person. I know what he looks like, and I know that he's bad news. So it's like you can start to get the idea, like, oh, they got a lot of White Walkers. That's not good. But there, I mean, of course, Jon's able to take him out. And then, of course, I mean, like even Jon comes up with the sword, the wolf's head at the end, and this new guy comes up with, like, nice cool fight, and then of course John drives the sword through his mouth. It's like, that's another one of those like, oh, he did. And then something I thought was actually nice is that once again we leave the Craster house, and there's something that I was like, yeah, I'm like, you know what, Mike, it's about time we do this. It's when John's like, yeah, what do you want to do with the house? And of course the wives are like, burn it. And I'm like, good. I'm like, let's be done with the story. I'm like, let's burn the house down, end the story. And then when you get to that battle, you start to feel like John and Sam are actually the MVPs of the battle. And Sam I thought was really cool in this fight, where he gets introduced in he gets introduced in season 1. He's the fat coward and he even made it clear, look, he's like, yeah, he's like, my father doesn't like me though. And here, he really kind of turns into this leader where he's just barking orders everyone, and that's kind of the same with John as well. So that's why I'm like, John and Sam are the MVPs about. I mean, you can see that Thawne, like, I think that's what his name is, like, where like he doesn't respect Jon Snow, but it's like, but he's a good leader. And then when he leaves the top of the wall, he puts another guy in charge. This guy's not qualified. He doesn't know what to do. And even John's like, hey, he's like, we got to do this. He's like, I don't know what to do. And then John's buddies, who they now respect him now, they get along much better, ended up sacrificing their lives for him. And they go to this guy and they're like, hey, Thawne wants you down there because you're the best man. You're the best he's got, which obviously that's not true, but like they're trying to give him confidence when he's like, okay, yeah. And I don't believe they say this, but they're like, okay, John, it's up to you. Lead us to victory. And then that leads to just awesome action where of course they drop like the flaming barrels on the giants, though. Of course, end up sending that sheep along, just slaughtering the guys on the wall. Even when they like shoot the giant, or even when like the giant just like, takes the air and just fires up into the air, and just hits the guy, he flies and just lands on the ground. It's like, oh, this is a brutal battle. And then of course John ends up going down below, takes out the new leader that was like that they brought in, and of course he's like fighting him, and just like these are some of the best fight scenes I think Game of Thrones has ever done. And it's not lazy fights where like, no, John comes in and he just goes, and he swings his sword everywhere, and then of course even when he gets his head, his face banged on like that metal side, you feel that where it's like, oh, it's like your face. And even when it looks like John's about to die, like he's gonna choke it, spits blood in his face, takes the hammer, smashes him on the head with it. It's like, jeez, he's so brutal, he's a badass. All of a sudden, Jon Snow is absolutely amazing. And then for Sam, this is the moment that I'm like, I love the best. I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved what they did with Jon Snow. Then again, I loved mostly everything about this season. But with Sam, where I'm like the fat coward that everyone was like, yeah, I'm like, he's not going to last very long in the battle, though. He's going to be easy to kill. Sam being like, yeah, he's like, my father thinks I'm a loser. John wasn't like that. It's just that John was just the guy that like didn't want to kill people. Sam starts turning into this leader, though, where the guy that he's working with, I mean, he's just shaking because he's just like so afraid. Sam walks by, he's not shaking at all. I mean, he's like, I'm afraid, but I'm just not showing it. And even when this other guy like asks me, he's just like, man, he's like, you killed a White Walker. He's like, how in the world did you do that? And he's like, and Sam's like, look, I had to. He was gonna hurt Gilly, take the baby. Who was going to save her? Me. And he even like says like where he's just like, he's like, man when I came to the wall, he's like, I was nobody. And then leads to, well, one of the best lines by Sam in this particular episode. I'll get to the other one in a little bit. Where of course the other guy was just like, so he's like, so are you afraid? And he's like, yeah, I'm afraid, but I'm not a nobody anymore. I think that's a great line from someone that was just so afraid, and just where it's like you can't realize, like, yeah, this guy's not gonna survive long about. Ends up surviving this battle though, and it really kind of jokes around quite a bit in this battle. Like, there are sprinkles of humor though, but it's not just it's not forced humor. It's not. It doesn't feel forced. It feels like it's at the appropriate time where here we go. I'm gonna say it. Where of course Gilly gets to the door and he's like, yeah, I'm not supposed to anyone, and he's like, Pip, open the fucking gate. Obviously not as good as it was, and then even when I mean, when the other guy's like, he's like, they're right in front of the door, like sniping the guy with the crossbow. So I'm like, oh, he's like, we're gonna die. He's like, yeah, we're gonna die if we don't hit him. and then even like shoots him, like the one, shoots at one. Like, he's like, ha, yes, I got one. And he's like, oh, was that it? Is it over? No. Well then, hands the crossbow back, and but just throughout the battle, Sam's barking orders to everyone though, and of course, like, John's even at the wall where he tells his buddies, like, hey, you gotta guard that gate. If that if that giant gets in here, he's like, we're all doomed. And even when he leaves the wall, he even tells the guy next to him where he's like, hey, this guy's in charge. But then he goes, hey, remember, when this happens, you gotta do this. And they do it. So that's why I'm like, John and Sam are the MVPs of the battle. And then, of course, after they win the battle, of course, John goes out to surrender. Stannis comes in. And so I do feel like Stannis and Jon Snow are going to be defending the wall, basically for, like, in Season 5. I'm not sure how long that's going to last. But, yeah, just in general, this is such a fantastic season. Story moved along, had some great fight scenes, great music. Most of the locations were interesting to me, where, like, even like characters like Arya and the Hound, where I was like, okay, I'm like, you're getting sidelined this season. It's like, oh, this is what we're leading to. Daenerys making hard choices. Of course, just to say King's Landing, it's probably 20 minutes talking about it. Jon Snow becomes an even better character than I could have ever imagined them. I'm like, this is, in my opinion, the best season of Game of Thrones so far. And normally I would talk about the bad. I don't have a lot of bad things to say. Actually, one small thing. When Oberyn died, and of course Tywin stands up and he's like, okay, we are now here to sentence Tyrion to death. And Tywin 2 episodes later, because of course the episode 9 was with Jon Snow the entire time. Episode 10, he's like, we're gonna kill Tyrion tomorrow. And I'm like, really? You have to wait a day to kill him? Maybe this is customs, but I'm like, seriously? Yeah, you gotta wait a day to kill him? And I know the reason why they did that is so he could escape, but it's like, really? Okay, whatever. Just as I said, that's something minor though. I'm glad he didn't die. I'm not trying to say, we should have died, but it's like, really, he had to wait a day, which I'm sure they do that in like movies and like TV all the time, where, obviously they do, where there's, where they're like, okay, they're like, you have to like sundown, you have like 24 hours on with that, and it's like, that's plenty of time to think of something and escape. Like, why do that? But just in general, I love this season. I'm super excited for season 5. But yeah, let me know what you think though. Do you think this is the best, worst, right in the middle season though? Like, comment, and subscribe. I got more football content coming out though. Really excited for the next season. I have low expectations for the Seahawks, but I'm still excited for the season nonetheless though. Hopefully we will continue to grow this channel. And follow me on Facebook, MattheWleininger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.